Hello and welcome back to another episode of Coffee Wednesday, and this is the part of our show where we get to talk about different ways to bring back the magic and, of course, the pleasure of reading and self-education into your life. And in today's episode, we're going to talk about something that's confused me for the longest time. And that thing is, how is it the case that some people just find it so easy to integrate reading into their lives? How is it the case that there are some people who just seem like they're natural readers, whereas some of us on the sidelines, we have to rely on elaborate reading techniques. We have to really motivate ourselves to read through a 100-page book. We really have to spend months on end just to finish one book. And of course, back in July, I clocked an impressive one book a month record, or maybe sometimes in July, I think I read half a book in July. So that kicked off kind of like this desperate search for why is it the case that, the minute life gets a little bit chaotic, reading goes out of the window, at least for me. And why is it the case that even after 8 to 9 years of trying to figure out how to make reading into an integral part of my life, it's still not quite there? What is it about reading or these readers who can just do it so naturally? What's so different about those people? And I think I found the answer in a recent garage clean out that I did, and I want to explain all of this. I want to share that insight with you guys in this episode. So we got a really great episode coming up, so stick around for more. So before I start today's episode, now there's a podcast feed for these episodes that you can access through Spotify or Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts, just so you can take these episodes wherever you go. If you're on a run, if you're going to school, picking up your kids, anywhere you want. So it's going to give you a more dynamic way to engage with this show. And of course, this podcast is attached to a newsletter. So in case you prefer reading these insights, in case you want to receive extra goodies from the newsletter, tips, advice, exercises, different insights, stuff that I've been reading throughout the week, make sure to sign up for the newsletter. And I'll send you a little email every Saturday for you to remind yourself that, yes, you're still on this path, you still care about learning, and you still care about making reading an integral part of your life. And that brings us to today's topic, which is, what is the missing link between people who have to try really hard to make reading into an integral part of their lives versus people who can just kind of do it naturally, right? So I'm not going to use the example, or I'm not going to use an approach where those people had upbringings full of books, because in some cases, people who have had a pretty bookish upbringing, the minute they enter a state of chaos, they tend to lose that motivation entirely. They tend to lose touch with the thing that's really motivating them to read. And I really want to know what that thing is. And so I went back into my garage. And for context, the books on the shelf right here, they're about 10% of all the books I own. And of course, recently we did a lot of moving. I'm currently in this kind of self-created studio here. It's a tiny little room on the first floor of this house, and it's kind of tucked away in a corner. I'm this is the perfect space for me to do some recording and to do some podcast recording and video recording. But this entire thing is just 10% of all the books I own. And the 80% of the nearly 2,000 books I own, they're in a garage. So sometimes I go on these archaeological dives into my old archive of books, and it's actually really funny. It's basically the process of you unearthing books that you don't even know you've owned. So as I was digging through all the stuff, I found this old box of psychology books, and it was filled with Freud, B.F. Skinner, and some positive psychology books from Mahesh Csikszentmihalyi. And of course, as I'm digging through the entire pile, I found this book right here. It's a book called Toward a Psychology of Being by Abraham Maslow. And Abraham Maslow, I think he's so ubiquitous in the self-help circle that he needs no introduction. He's the one that came up with that Maslow hierarchy of needs. And I think everyone, in every corporation, one of the modules that you have to go through is to understand this pyramid, right? So it's so central to this cultural discourse of well-being that it needs no introduction. But there's one concept in here that I don't see a lot of corporate people talk about, which is the difference between deficient cognition and being cognition. And I think this idea right here holds the key to why certain people find it so easy to read effortlessly, while the rest of us, we really have to spend a lot of effort, hold a lot of strain in our bodies just to try to get through some quality reading. So according to Maslow, paraphrasing here, Deficient cognition is a way of viewing the world where you look at the world in terms of what the world can give you. You look at the world in terms of like, okay, so we got a Monday picnic. You're not thinking of that picnic in terms of like, okay, I'm just going to enjoy the weather and the people who are there, but you're looking at that picnic as some kind of a networking opportunity. Am I going to meet a cute person? Am I going to enjoy that food right there so I don't have to pay for lunch? Do I just get to escape work for a few hours because there's this work picnic happening, right? So that's deficient cognition, and you'd be surprised how many of us still thinking this way. And you'd be surprised whenever we approach a project, whenever we get excited about a new venture, a lot of us tend to approach these things from deficient cognition. We're looking for things that we want, not just the thing in itself. We're not appreciating the event or the object as a thing in itself. So we're always deficiently picking up whatever it is that's in our surroundings, and we're trying to maximize their value. And on the other side, there is being cognition. The shorthand for this being cognition is B-Cognition. And B-Cognition basically says that at some point, if you develop yourself into a self-sufficient individual, you will be able to access a kind of perception of reality where you see things as they are. So instead of looking at your phone as a device where you just kind of access your emails, a app, or this little screen that allows you to check your bank balance, or it's just a tool for me to stay in touch with my family and my friends, you look at the phone for its own designs. It's like the camera's really well designed, the screen's very well designed. You know, how the fuck did they put so many little components in such a little device? It's a modern wonder. And how is it the case that, for example, this camera that I'm recording this video on, how is it the case that, you know, the camera technology has gotten so good, now we can pack like a cinema quality camera into such a small body? And how is it the case that now I'm literally recording my audio with an affordable microphone? And this was the microphone that Michael Jackson used to record Thriller. You know, how is it the case that technology has gotten so affordable that now we can build a home studio for next to nothing? So this perception is kind of what being perception is pointing you towards. It's an inherent appreciation of what it is that you're engaging with. So you no longer see things in terms of extraction and utility. And when we apply this insight to reading, there are some of us who read with a deficient cognition state. There are some of us who go into reading wanting to extract something. For example, you want to read a book for class, and as you're reading this book, you're always thinking to yourself, oh, can I use this part of the book for an essay? Or can I use that part of the book for an essay? Or can I extract this quote right here to make myself sound smarter in my essay? Or for example, you're going home from a really bad, kind of like a bad date, and you're drenched in the rain, everything's horrible, you have a bus that ran into a big puddle, and now you're all splashed with mud and water. You know, you might read a poetry book after that entire event, but notice, even when you're reading that poetry book, you're still engaging with deficient cognition. You're trying to extract a kind of consolation from this poem. You're trying to like make the poem do what you want to do. And many other cases, if you read a novel for a book club, you want to extract certain things from a novel, or you want to extract certain information from a philosophy book, even though, yes, some of these books are designed to give you information, but if you're coming at it from a deficient cognition state, that's going to train your mind to look for things that are only useful to you. And of course, you're going to get frustrated when you don't find useful things. And of course, you're going to get really angry, and you're going to feel this body strain, and your mind's going to feel really tired after engaging with a book from a deficient cognition state, because you're not getting what you want, and because your parameter, the parameter that defines what you want is so narrow, of course, you feel like you're wasting your time with a book. Whereas really exceptional readers, really just the readers, you look at them and they seem to be living a completely different reality, and they seem to just sit down and read a book for the sake of it, or they're reading a newspaper just for the sake of it. They're reading something highly complicated. They're reading something really interesting just for the sake of it. They've accessed being cognition, because at some point your reading abilities can get so good that you become so attuned to the style of the prose. You become so attuned to how the author's using these very fun examples to illustrate a point. You become so attuned even to the rhetorical devices used in a book that reading becomes an inherent appreciation just for the form of writing, with no need to extract anything from it. Now, think about how different that is from how we read nowadays on the internet. Whenever a blog post starts to lose us a little bit, we think to ourselves, okay, there's always the next blog post. Whenever a TikTok starts to bore us a little bit 30 seconds in, it's like, yeah, I'm not getting anything I want from this TikTok. So next. So a lot of the stuff that we tend to read right now becomes very extractive and very deficient in its cognition. Whereas I think people who really just do enjoy reading for the sake of it, they're willing to look beyond. Sometimes a book could contain some really bad arguments, but a person with a kind of being cognition state of mind is able to sit down with that book and read it, if the book is well written, that is, and read it just to appreciate the prose. And they will have no problem putting a book away if they're not deriving any pleasure out of it. So approaching a book from being cognition achieves two things. Number one, you won't waste more time on books that you no longer want to read, because you know your purpose with reading a book is no longer just to extract something from it, but to actually appreciate a book for what it is. So this tends to circumvent a lot of the needless struggling that we go through. When we pick up a book, we know the information is good, but God, it's just a tedious book to get through, and it's just a book that's not for us. But we tend to silence that part of our brains that's attuned to these other features of the book beyond just information. We tend to silence that part and say, I'm going to muscle through this thing, and you end up hating the entire experience. And of course, it's going to feel very, very neurotic, and it's going to cause a lot of mental strain. And one day it might cause so much pain that you just decide to never read ever again. So with being cognition, you're able to sidestep that, because the minute you recognize that your purpose with reading a book is not just to extract information from it, but to enjoy the process of it, it makes selection a lot easier. It makes what you're attuned to a lot easier to define. And as a result, you tend to get a lot more out of some of the books that you've selected for yourself based on your, a wide funnel, but narrow parameters. So this might sound like we are quitting a lot of books because, we're still trying to extract something from it, but the frame of mind is different. You're in it to enjoy it. You're not in it to extract anything, nor to fulfill a goal. And books that and the books that fulfill that criteria, or those criteria, are pretty hard to find. And you need to be a lot more smart with selecting what it is that's going to float your boat. If you read from a enjoyment perspective, if you tuning to your being cognition and say, what are some of the books that I just inherently enjoy without needing to extract information from them? And that's going to make your reading a lot more of a smooth sail compared to you straining your eyes against the book that you don't really want to read just to extract something from it. And second of all, you're going to click into a really nice rhythm. And this is what I found in my reading practices recently if you employ being cognition, because all of a sudden you have the ability to enjoy a book for the sake of it while suspending disbelief. You'll be able to just sit there and enjoy it without needing to be anywhere else. And if the thing that you've selected is good, it's actually going to put your mind in such a relaxed state. You're going to have a lot more fun reading it. It's going to build like a positive feedback loop where you enjoy the process and makes you want to read more. And you read more and you think to yourself, okay, let me find another book that's enjoyable to read. And time passes and the amount of books that you read will naturally go up. So it's kind of like the same advice that we talked about in how I read 6 books a month. If you tune into this way of reading where you place heavy emphasis on the experience instead of extracting something from a book, you will learn the information and you will learn all the stuff that you need to learn from a book, and sometimes even difficult books. If you approach really difficult books from a being cognition perspective, which is you don't crave or you don't set the objective of extracting everything you need from it, but you just enjoy the process of slogging through a difficult piece of work, it also gives you a more in-depth understanding because you see reading as a verb. You don't see the label read as the final step. So those are the two things. Number one, selection becomes a lot easier. And number two, your reading experience is going to get a lot more intuitive. You're going to have a lot more fun doing it that way. So this approach is what I would think is the missing link between people who read a lot effortlessly and people who kind of like struggle really hard against the text. Which is, if you ever feel the desperate need to extract something from a book, that book is probably not right for you. If you feel the desperate need to muscle through a book or any reading material, then yeah, it's probably not right for you. If you read a 600-page novel just to say that yes, I've got the story, I've completed reading this book, well, you're gonna have a really bad time reading it. Whereas the same 600-page novel, read from a D-Cognition perspective, attunes you to the page. It just places you in the moment of reading, and you have to ask yourself, is this enjoyable? Or in a case of a more difficult novel, am I willing to put all the expectations away and just see where this book takes me? And could this lead me to an unexpected place? Because when you stop needing something from your reading experience, counterintuitively, your reading gets a lot easier. You put the unnecessary baggage down, and you tend to gain a deeper layer of access to the story. So that's basically the insight. And that insight is basically, whenever you feel any kinds of strain, try to click into a special mind state where you read with no purpose nor objectives in mind. And even with nonfiction, you can do this. Sometimes it's possible to just explore a topic because you're interested in it. And sometimes when a book is not working out for you, it's okay to put it down and to use this mindset somewhere else. So you really have to be careful not to set any strict boundaries and standards around this concept, which is like, I need to muscle through this because I need to get something out of this book because I need it for an assignment. Well, let yourself do that, but try your best to also appreciate this book for what it is, appreciate the prose for what it is, and appreciate just a moment of reading. And just appreciate the flow of how the words are being converted into concepts and imageries and storylines and plots in your head, and just kind of appreciate that weird process that goes on. Have a bit of curiosity and see where the reading experience takes you. And what you're going to find is that you're actually going to retain a lot more if you read that way. You don't need to have some sort of elaborate note-taking process here and there, and you don't really need that all sorts of bells and whistles to justify the difficulty of reading a book. Sometimes this mindset switch can literally turn a tedious book into the most fascinating thing you've ever read. So keep that in mind. And of course, we're also fighting against the forces of institutions, because in institutions, all you're doing is it's just basically extractive reading. You're not actually keeping in mind the magical power of literature. Even in a literature degree, I can tell you, sometimes I read a book, I think to myself, this book has become so boring after I have this mindset of needing to extract something from it, so I just stopped enjoying it. So basically, as a conclusion here, whenever you feel like reading becomes a strain, and whenever you feel like you want reading to be a part of your life, but yet it's feeling so full of strain and full of effort, maybe you're looking at it the wrong way. Maybe the way to look at it is just a mere supplement to life, and you're just going to carve out that time to really enjoy the process of learning how to read, the process of parsing through difficult things, and allow the page to breathe magic on its own without needing to extract anything from it. And counterintuitively, if you click into that rhythm, and if you click into the flow of really enjoying something, counterintuitively, you will gain the deepest understanding of whatever it is that you're reading. And that's basically the whole insight, and I hope that it makes some sense to you guys. And this is an idea that I noted down in my recent newsletter issue. And if you want to read that, link in the description down below. Nevertheless, that's all I have for this week, and I hope to see you next Wednesday back here again on Coffee Wednesday. And Robin Walden here. See you in the next one. Take care, and goodbye.